Glad you're here with us today for the third webinar in our Advocacy Toolbox series. I'm Kathy Brown, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. We're thrilled to have you joining us, whether you are a seasoned advocate or brand new to this work, you belong here. So thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded and the link will be sent to everyone who registered. You are currently muted, so you will need to use the other Zoom functions to communicate with our speaker and each other. Please use the Q&A box for questions posed to our speaker. If you drop a question in the Q&A, I will be monitoring that and let them know your question towards the end of the session. This is a highly interactive session, so we will be asking you to drop things in the comment and answering questions along the way. You can use the chat for that. It will be monitored and shared with our speaker as well. And please don't be shy with the reactions. Our guests can't see you, and that sometimes feels weird. So smash those emojis if you hear something that you like, or if you have questions or something. I love to see those little hearts that float up in front of people's faces when you do that. So please don't be shy with those reactions. That's really nice to see. Before I hand it over to our speaker for today, I just want to give you a little more about the Advocacy Toolbox series. This series is about equipping all of us, staff, families, people we serve, community members with the tools to make change. Across these 5 sessions, we're going to connect with each other, build knowledge, learn new advocacy strategies, and strengthen our collective power. So I'll give you a brief overview of each in our 5-part series. The first 2 have already been completed. The Compass. This session gave participants a sense of where we are today in the larger disability rights movement. Remind us that as a community of people, we have power and influence, and helped us understand that advocacy work and making change in the disability rights movement, which we are all part of, isn't a sprint, it isn't a marathon, it's a relay race, and it's our turn to take the baton. Followed by session 2, Hammers and Nails, which occurred last week, dug into various kinds of state-level policy work happening in Missouri, why it matters, what issues might be impacting disability-related services, education, and family supports. Today, we have Scott Rupp with us talking about advocacy and relationships. Advocacy is ultimately about relationships, not just a mass email or a 2-second elevator pitch. Today in this session, we're going to learn from a former legislator and executive coach about making authentic and influential connections with policymakers and allies. Next week, I encourage you to join us. This session will bring everything together. We will talk about our priorities, our shared strategies, and how we move forward as one community with one voice. That's our blueprint. And we're going to wrap up with a more intensive storytelling experience. So data makes you credible, but stories make you memorable. So we are going to learn more about how to tell our story in a way that moves people and drives change. You'll hear about storytelling today and influencing people with your lived experience as well. It's really, really important to effective advocacy. So I hope you will join us for the final in our 5-part series. If you'd like more information about the Advocacy Toolbox series, you can go to our website, eastersealsmidwest.org. You'll find a box that looks like this on the home screen, and will take you to the registration site. Registration is live for all in the remaining series. And that brings us to kicking off today's session. I'm so excited to introduce you to Scott Rupp. Scott is a seasoned public servant, executive leadership coach, and a passionate advocate for individuals with developmental disabilities. He served 4 years in the Missouri House of Representatives and 8 years in the Missouri State Senate, where he championed issues ranging from economic development to disability rights. Following his legislative career, Scott was appointed chairman of the Missouri Public Service Commission. He is the founder of Ticken Strategies, an executive leadership coaching and consulting firm. Scott empowers leaders to grow with clarity, confidence, and purpose. He's a best-selling author and sought-after professional speaker, bringing real-world insight and personal passion to every stage and boardroom. Scott's advocacy is deeply personal. He is the father of a daughter with developmental disabilities and a longtime supporter and fan of Easter seals, where he continues to champion inclusion, opportunity, and support for families like his own. So please give Scott a very warm welcome. And I will stop sharing my screen and turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate being here. And everybody sit down. You didn't have to stand when she introduced me and stuff. So, no, it's great to be here. This is a great organization of which I have a long history. But like Kathy said, I'm at a disadvantage because I have no idea who I'm talking with. So I think they're going to throw up a couple polls here. So go ahead and answer those. Basically, which best describes you? Are you a family member, a self-advocate, a staff member? So just kind of get an idea of who's really kind of here today. Um, and because we want to talk about the lock and key, building relationships with policymakers, and we want to figure out what unlocks everything, whether it be government relations, community affairs, or sales. The key denomination in all that is relationships. So it looks like for our answers from the first question is a professional who provides services to people in community is the bulk of who we have, followed by family members of a person with a disability, which is awesome because those are the people that really are the frontline people that live the experience, that work with individuals or raise them or in their own family, and they're the best advocates. So that's awesome that you guys are here. Second question I would love to know is when was the last time you contacted your legislator? So that's the next question they're gonna throw up because a lot of times we're surprised at these answers. If you have a strong advocacy system in your organization, the numbers tend to be higher. But sometimes on the family side, people get a little intimidated. They figure, oh, I can't reach out to them, or I don't know what to say, or they're too busy, and things of that nature. So it looks like we got, oh, wow, within the last month. 44% of the people have contacted their legislator in the last month, and we got two people that have never done it. So I'm talking to you two and those in the last 12 months. We want to get that going up. So we have all heard it said that it's not what you know, it's who you know. And that is so true. But just knowing someone doesn't get results most times. So what we really kind of need to do is we need to kind of change that saying. So it's not what you know, and it's really not who you know. In reality, it's how many people know you. Because especially when it comes to key decision makers, oh, we might know, oh, I know my state rep. I talked to him once at a parade. No, does your state representative know who you are? When you walk in the door, they recognize you, they know you. That is really, really key. It's not who you know, it's how many people actually know you, which is a great barometer of how effective can we possibly be. So we're talking about building relationships with key decision makers and advocate and being an advocate. So I don't know how many people saw the research that came out 2 weeks ago, but they did research on what was the absolute worst day to start building a relationship with your legislature. They don't know if anybody saw that, but we're not going to do a poll, but what do you think? Maybe the worst day to start is maybe Christmas Day. Maybe Thanksgiving is probably not a great day. Arbor Day, maybe not the best day. But all the research points that the worst day to start building a relationship with your legislature is the day that you actually need to have that relationship. That is the worst day because that means you are so far behind the curve. We have to start building these relationships in anticipation of maybe a day that we would need that is there. Um, but that's really cool for people like me because people hire me and they hire other people like me and organizations like me to help them get indoors to see people because they've never taken the time to build their own relationship. Whether it's a center of influence, they want to get in there, if they want to get into a key decision maker. But, sometimes they just need getting help in the door. But most of the time when people hire somebody, it's because they want to trade or leverage that person's relationship. that relationship that that person has invested in and built over time because they need it. They don't have it. And that's why you see lobbyists and you see all these people that have the ear of the decision maker. It's because they've spent the time and the effort and the energy to do that. And I'm reminded of a story of Pablo Picasso. He was at a cafe and he was sitting out having coffee, and this lady sitting next to him recognized Pablo Picasso, and he was doodling on a napkin. And so she walked over, she introduced herself, and she's like, "Oh, Mr. Picasso, I'm a huge fan." And she's like, "Can I purchase that napkin from you?" Because he had made a doodle. And he looks up at her and he's like, "Sure, it'll be $2.3 million dollars." And she was taken aback. I was like, "What do you mean? I literally watched you doodle this in a minute and a half. How can you charge $2.3 million dollars for something that took you 2 minutes?" He's like, "You're not buying my 2 minutes. You're buying my lifetime of the ability that I've created to be able to doodle this in 2 minutes." And it's kind of the same thing is we look at these great works of ours and you're not just purchasing, you're purchasing that person's talent and stuff. So if we don't have that ability to do that, we have to go out and we have to create it on our own. And so sometimes we don't have a relationship with people we want to talk to because sometimes it's virtually impossible. I can't know every state rep that changes every 2 years, and then I have term limits. I can't know every state senator. I can't know every commissioner. I can't know every city council person and wherever it is. So sometimes it is difficult to figure out who do I have to have relationships with. So we will have to start from scratch sometimes and start building relationships. And so how do you make an impression when you do get to see a decision maker, when you do get in that door? What are the things that you should be able to do effectively in order to get your message across, in order to be convincing, in order to be memorable? Well, a lot of times I like to start with what not to do. Now, I was in the legislature for 4 years, I was in the Missouri State Senate for 8 years, and I would see, hundreds of people in a day. I would have meetings scheduled about every 10 minutes, and I saw a lot of people really do stupid things. For example, there was a couple that they owned a nursing home in my Senate district, and they wanted to build a new nursing home. Well, apparently they didn't realize that they had to go through this certificate of need process and they had to get their state senator to recommend that their certificate of need get approval. And apparently these people figured it out the weekend before they were supposed to have their hearing. So on a Sunday, I get a doorbell ring at my house and I open up my door, and on my porch is a paper plate with some homemade brownies covered in saran wrap and a post-it note that said, "Please support our certificate of need, Mr. and Mrs. blah, blah, blah." Now, granted, I'm not going to eat random brownies that are just put on my door step, but I was more or less really fascinated by their thought process. They should have been engaged in the process. They knew how to do this, but you can imagine they're sitting there on the weekend going, "What should we do? Oh my gosh, I don't know. What should we do? Let's bake them some brownies and let's send them over there," and things of that nature. So sometimes, we try to do something meaningful and stuff, but it has to be delivered in the right context and for it to even have an entire and be effective at all. There's also another story of individuals that were trying to protest Medicaid reform. I was in the legislature when we decided that we needed to end Medicaid and revamp it. We sunset it and we were designing the new program. A lot of people were upset. A lot of people were concerned. And there was a group that decided they had a wonderful idea. And they were going to come up and they were going to get heavy duty metal chains and they were going to chain themselves to the doors of the House of Representatives. And you imagine they're in their the living room talking about this would be great. They're going to have to go through us before they can talk to it. They won't be able to do their job until they deal with us. But the thing they didn't do is they didn't do all the research and they chained themselves to the doors, but it was to the wrong doors. And they did it on a day that the Missouri House wasn't even in session. So unfortunately, these people were standing there chained to a door. They had to get the fire department come in and chuck the jaws of life and get them out because it just didn't work. So sometimes grand gestures, we're going to do this big thing to get attention. A lot of times that just doesn't work. It's just a one-off and things. Now, those things can have some value if it is compiled with other things, but it can't be your solution of we're going to do this big thing and get a big splash and then nothing else. Other things that don't work is when the First Steps program was going to be eliminated. I walked into my office as a state representative. It had been announced the week before that the governor was eliminating the program. I think I was a first or second year state representative. And I walked in to 30 very, very angry women in my office that wanted my head on a platter. And I literally stood there in my office and I had spittle all over my face because women were literally putting their fingers in my face. How dare you do this? And rah, 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 rah. And I'm standing there dumbfounded going, what the heck is the First Steps program? I don't even know what this thing is. But these people were so passionate, they were so angry. I mean, now granted, this was 21 years ago, but if memory serves me correct, I swear there was a woman with a pitchfork and there was another woman with a burning torch. They were that angry and they just vented at me. And then they stormed up and they went down the hall and they started screaming at somebody else. And it was actually didn't help them at all. I got no education. And all I was like, yeah, I don't know who you people are, but I'm not helping you. I mean, because they were just so angry. Another thing is like what doesn't work is, sometimes people are like, oh, we better give them these trinkets or we better make them something or a little stress ball to remember our name and things of that nature. Don't waste your money and stuff of that nature. Now, if you have a lot of money and you want brand recognition, I get that. But if you have a limited budget or if you're a little individual person that wants to make it, just that stuff, we get so much of that stuff, it literally just starts to just get tossed or we give it away. A lot of times too, people will put all this time and effort and energy into putting together this big report that's going to prove that their position is correct. And I know how much time and effort goes into these things. I've had people sit across from my desk and they'd be like, well, Senator, if you look at page 47 in tab A and you look at the spreadsheet down there, you'll see that the return on investment, and they will literally give me a multi-page report that I know spent time and hours and money compiling. And unfortunately, when they would leave, I would just throw them in the trash. Well, that's what I used to do because one time I had a lady that had left her coat in my office and she came back in 2 minutes after our meeting. I was like, oh, Senator, I left my coat. I'm like, sure, go grab your coat. She goes, she gets her coat. She's walking out. She looks in the trash can and she sees her organization's report in the trash can. And she felt like I shot her dog and I felt horrible. So from that day forth, I compiled all the reports on the corner of my desk and I didn't put them in the trash until at the end of the day, and I put them all in the trash at the same time because I did not have the time to research those things. So sometimes just make sure that you're not spending all this time and energy and effort on something that is not going to get read or it's not going to actually impact. And you have to understand what is actually going to work. So that comes up to the next section. What does actually work? Okay. What works is you creating a word picture. It is you coming in and telling your story and using vivid, descriptive language that engages the senses and the imagination. I mean, it's a powerful advocacy tool. It's a powerful persuasion tool, storytelling, which you're going to hear more about next session. And it's also great for sales because it taps directly into how the brain processes information. Now, this technique goes beyond simply just sharing facts. It allows you, the storyteller, the individual with the experience, to connect with people, the legislature, on a deeper, more emotional level. And there's actually brain science behind this. Why creating word pictures is so effective. You see, when we hear a story or a vivid description, something remarkable happens in our brains. So right now you're listening to me talk. And if we were to put an imaging system on your brain and we were to watch what part of your brain is firing right now, the language center is firing. That is lighting up. But if I told you that this morning I woke up and it was cold out and the house was kind of chilly and I decided I'm going to make some fresh bread. And that's going to be great. So I got out the dough and I put some cinnamon in it and I kneaded it, and just that smell of the yeast. I mean, it's kind of that unique smell. And so then I put it in the oven and then that smell of the bread, bacon, that just warmed the whole house. And then when you take it out, it's got that golden crust on it. When you touch it, it's hard, but it's nice on the inside. And when I cut it open, the steam came up and then I got out the butter, the good butter, the Kerrygold butter, not the stuff we give our kids, the stuff that we hide in the back of the refrigerator. And I put that on there and just, oh, and that first taste, oh, so good. So good. See, if I were to tell you that story, what you would have seen on the brain scan is that the areas of your brain that deal with smell would have gotten activated. The area of your brain that dealt with taste got activated, and the area of your brain with touch got activated. So by simply telling you that story about baking bread this morning, I activated four other areas of your brain, and I created an experience rather than just relaying information to you. You see, inside of our brain, there's this little tiny thing called the amygdala, and it's the shape of an almond, and it's about as big as an almond, and that's our emotional processing center. And it plays a crucial, crucial role in memory formation. See, when we hear stories that stir up feelings of empathy, fear, joy, the amygdala prioritizes those memories, and it actually locks them into long-term storage. And that's why having a family member or someone that works with individuals with disabilities, telling a personal story about someone's struggles stays with us a lot longer than facts and figures and things that we just never really seem to be able to remember. It literally is because our brains are wired to remember images and emotions. And that is why vivid emotional storytelling is so powerful, because it's not just heard, it's felt and it's remembered. And I know that you're gonna hear more about this. But the one thing that I would want everyone to walk away with is if you want to be impactful, you have to have a story and you have to practice your story. We would have hearings up in legislature on committees on bills, and people would come up and they would want to testify in favor or against a bill. And they knew that they would be given 5 minutes. That's the only amount of time they would be given. And they had a story, but they never practiced it. And I saw so many people that had these great stories to tell that they were 3.5 minutes into their time limit and they're still introducing themselves. You have to practice your story. It needs to be canned. It needs to be something that if I came up to you in a dark alley and I said, tell me your story right now, you'd be able to start telling me your story. And it should be filled with word pictures, but you have to practice it. And you have to help under people and you have to have someone listen to it and help you critique that story and say, hey, add this, or what about this type of thing? And you have to practice that. And if you want to be a very effective advocate, when you go in and you talk to these legislators, there's four things that you have to understand. Is you have to understand the four P's. They are passion, patience, persistence, and process. If you come in to talk to me as a legislator and you don't have passion, why should I? Why should I care? Now, this can cut both ways because I had a lot of those first steps moms that had way too much passion and they were so passionate they let their passion control them. So you have to control your passion and you have to be able to give it out in spurts when it's needed to be given out because if not, you'll burn out. Or you'll be branded as somebody that, oh, wow, I see you coming in the hallway and I duck into somewhere else because I don't want to have to deal with your anger or things of that nature. But you have to have passion because if I have so many other people that want stuff from me, if you're not passionate about it, I'm not going to be passionate about it. The second one is patience, is you're going to have patience. And we've all heard in the legislature, I mean, it takes years, 6 years. When I was first elected, they said it'll take 6 years to get anything done that you want to get done. Wow. And then you throw in term limits. Whew, that's really tough. You know, a lot of people might know me from all the stuff I did with autism. I passed the legislation for autism insurance coverage and created the Office of Autism and got funding for different autism services and stuff. But that took me multi years to get that done. And you have to have patience. And the third P is you got to have persistence because these things are going to get told no. You're going to get told no, and you got to come back. You can't get discouraged. And you have to learn from the previous time. And you have to be persistent to keep knocking down those doors and things of that nature. And I've seen people be persistent. I've seen people with wonderful stories that were able to change the lives for so many people in this state simply because they controlled their passion. They were patient and they were persistent. But they also knew the fourth P, which is the process. You got to understand the whole process, how a bill becomes a law. What's the difference between a city councilman and a county commissioner? What's the difference between an elected and appointed official? You know, who are the key players? I mean, let's be honest, just because somebody is a state representative doesn't mean they have any power. Most of them don't. There's only a handful that do. Which ones have the power? Which one don't? What's the power of the committee chair? Is there a rules chair? You got to understand the key player and you have to learn the pressure points. Who can actually stop this? Who's going to be my biggest opposition and stuff? What's the difference between a majority and minority party and things of that nature? So if you know the process and you create a plan, you work your plan, and you're constantly revising your plan based off different legislative movements, then if you have persistence and patience with your passion, you will be successful. It just might take you a little bit longer than we're there. Then, once you have the four P's, you got to understand my four friends, Kate. And these four Kates, they are so important. And that the first friend, Kate, is named Educate. Elections don't have transformational powers, but people think they do. Just because I won an election, all of a sudden people thought I knew everything. Hey, Scott, do you know something about non-Medicaid eligible personal attendant services? I had no clue what that was, but of course I said I did because I didn't want to look stupid. So you have to understand that the elected people are no smarter than anybody else, and you may be the expert in the room, and it's okay. Now, we want to make sure that we don't, like embarrass people like if they don't know that, but you have to be like, hey, Scott, do you know anything about the non-Medicaid eligible personal care attendant services program? Oh, yeah, yeah, sure. Well, wonderful. Then you know that. So they could actually explain the program and validate whether or not I knew it or not. They had to educate me, even if I say I'm an expert on the thing, because most of the time the legislators are just faking it until they can make it. Now, the good ones will ask for help, but the bad ones will pretend that they know what they are talking about, even when they do not. You have to educate them. Keep it simple. Bullet points, talking points. Your leave behind, instead of a big, thick report, it needs to be a one-pager with bullets on exactly what you want them to do. I want you to support this bill in committee, blah, blah, blah. Seeking it out, one page, and then you have to repeat, 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 repeat. Repetition is the mother of learning. You pound it into their head. You have your story. This is what I want. I want this. And just repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. All right. Now, the second Kate is advocate. I mean, if you're changing something that has existed for a while, there's going to be a group of people that will resist your idea. They will either fear change, or they're going to fear your unknown, or they're going to have a competing interest, and they're going to combat your idea. And they will play to their audience. So you have to too. If I go into a conservative Republican's office and I'm talking about this program, I'm going to talk about the fiscal benefits and how much it's going to save the state, and how much it's going to be create smaller government, not bigger government. But if I'm going to talk to somebody that's more on the liberal persuasion, I might talk about the fairness. I might talk about the social equality piece. I might you pay more attention to things about the elderly and the poor and things of that nature. So know your audience and advocate your position. Now, the third Kate is communicate. This is key because there's so many different ways that we can communicate. The king of communication nowadays is video. Let's just be honest. That's how most people get their information. Now, you might not have the ability to go and create a video and things of that nature. But if you do have the ability, legislator, they might watch a 30-second video on something rather than read a much longer type of a thing. But actually, what actually works a little bit better than video is a handwritten note, because it's an archaic form that no one uses anymore. I mean, just think about it. You did something nice for somebody and they sent you a handwritten note. Well, first off, most people don't even acknowledge it. And then you might get an email, or maybe you get a text. But who actually takes out the time and writes? And if you can actually write in cursive, wow, that'd be kind of cool, and stuff. But it's a handwritten note that actually shows I took the time to acknowledge you, not just fire off a quick email. Phone calls are great. But a lot of times you got to get caught into the switchboard operator. That's where building that relationship and getting to know the gatekeeper is key. And if you can get your legislators a personal cell phone, or their campaign phone, because you can send them a text, you can do that. It's all about access. But a lot of times it's hard to get that access. But really, when you can actually be right in front of them face to face, go to their office, set up a coffee and do that, that is actually the best. because then you can gauge the reaction. You can do that, but you can't get there until you've actually built the relationship. So the key to that is you have to get to know the gatekeeper, and you have to get to know these people. You get to know them when they're in their district. You get to know them when they're trying to get elected, and you get to know them when they're out in the community. Now, I'm not talking about stalking, and I'm not talking about anything of that nature. I'm just talking about investing the time and the energy to actually go where they are. If they have a town hall and they have a thing, and you don't just sit there, you walk up, you thank them for their time, you introduce themselves that is there. All right. The fourth Kate is you have to dedicate. You got to dedicate the time. You got to dedicate, the energy and the mental and emotional and physical energy it's going to take to build a relationship. Because I mean, just think about it. Think about if you're married and your spouse, how much time and effort and energy you went into trying to get them to like you and impress you and things of that nature. And then hopefully it is a wonderful lifelong relationship that you have. But you had to think outside the box. You had to be creative. You had to be intentional. And we have to dedicate that. You dedicate something to a cause and you know the four Ks and you know the four Ps and you have a good story with word pictures and you're able to build those word pictures inside there, you will be successful. Now, maybe not as quickly as you would like, but you will be successful if you dedicate the time. So now I want to switch gears here and make it a little more interactive because let's assume you are actually sitting in front of your legislator and you have had your word story, you've had your word picture, you got your elevator speech, and you've just delivered it and you want to get their feedback and they give you feedback. But how do we know what they're actually saying? So what we're going to do is we are going to show 3 videos now, and I want you to listen to 3 separate videos of responses from legislators to you after you had just given them your sales pitch, your advocacy piece, or whatever it is you want to tell them, and you're getting verbal response sitting right across from them. I want you to listen to these, and then here's the key. I want you to pick which one of these responses you would want to have the most from that legislature, and then we'll talk. So pay attention. Can't hear it. Kathy, I think you're muted.
Thank you for coming in today and for sharing the perspective of Easter seals. I appreciate you taking the time to walk me through the challenges families are facing. It's helpful to hear directly from people doing the work on the ground. I can see why this issue matters, and I understand the impact it has on the individuals it serves. There are definitely a lot of pieces to consider here, and I'll be reviewing the details as the session continues. I can't speak to where things will land just yet, but I value the information you've brought forward. If there are updates or additional materials you think I should see, please feel free to send them my way. Thanks again for your advocacy and for keeping me informed.
All right, there was option number 1. Now Kathy's going to tee up option number 2. Would you rather hear this one? An unexpected error has occurred.
I'll be direct. Nothing you shared today convinces me to support your position. I've listened, I understand what you're asking for, and I'm not going to back this legislation. To be honest, this meeting hasn't changed my perspective. I don't see a path forward for your request, and I won't be supporting it. That's my position. I'm not trying to be rude, just clear. This was not persuasive, and my time could have been better used elsewhere. I wish you the best, but from my standpoint, this conversation is over.
Now option number 3. Which would you prefer to hear?
Hey, thank you so much for taking the time to come in today. I really appreciate everything Easter Seals does for our state. Honestly, hearing from dedicated advocates like you is one of the best parts of this job. The stories you've shared, they really matter. And it's clear you're making a real difference for families who need support. I just want you to know your passion, your commitment, your willingness to show up. That's what moves our state forward. And please, keep me updated as things develop. Your voice is incredibly important, and I can tell how much heart you put into this work. Seriously, thank you for being here and for everything you do. Our state is better because of advocates like you.
All right, now throw your votes in the chat there. Which one would you rather have heard after you walked out of that meeting? Maybe you're trying to whip a vote. Maybe you're trying to see if there's support. But in chat, let us know. What would you guys want to hear? All right, very good. Excellent. You guys are voting. Oh, they're coming in. Oh, it's getting
Oh,
close.
we got ones, threes. A lot of ones and threes. One. Oh, couple twos.
Okay, interesting.
Okay, couple of threes.
All right.
My flyby accounting here says 3 might be the winner.
Yep. 3 is the winner of the poll. But I can tell you that the one you don't want to hear is number 3. Go back, and if we're not going to play it again, but trust me on this. They never said they're going to support you. What that legislator did is he made you feel really good about yourself, really good about your message. They never said they were going to support it, but what they're using is they're allowing you to infer support. So when I would sit across from people that would ask me things all the time, my number one goal was that I wanted you to walk out of that office and like me. That is what my goal was. So if I could use words and make you feel like I was supporting you when I never said I was, and you walk out and go, he's a great guy. I mean, he's on board. He's on board. And then people go and they whip their votes, and then all of a sudden they think they have all this support and it's not there. This is because they never listened to what was said. Now, really good advocates like Kathy Brown, who literally did this to me in my Senate office. And she would follow up and say, oh, that's great, Senator. We really appreciate that. But when it comes to this piece of legislation, will you be supporting it? Yes or no? And I was like, oh, wow, she's good. So then I had to shift gears. And then I had to try more in for speak. And then she came back. She's like, oh, that's great. But I never heard you say if you're going to. And so yeah, I had to follow up to try to pin the legislator down. So when I look at all of those, the first one is the guy was pretty honest. He was just like, yeah, I'm not really sure and stuff like that. But if I'm really trying to whip a vote and seeing if I have support, I'd rather hear number 2. I'd rather have somebody come in and say, no, I'm a firm no. Don't waste time on me. Don't come back. I'm not in your camp. Go lobby somebody else. But a lot of times what we do is we infer and we allow legislators to infer their support. And that's where they kind of things get ambiguous. Listen to what they say and ask specific questions on, will you support this? Will you vote this out of committee? Will you do that? And force them to give you an answer. Now, the good ones will just be like, yeah, I don't know yet. And some of them, there's a few that will lie, but most of them don't lie anymore because it's so easily caught up and, people record everything and you said this and that's nature. But if it was me and I had those 3 meetings, I'd prefer to have number 2, the flat out no, so I could go and spend my efforts elsewhere and stuff. All right. So got a little mini action plan. We're at 12:40. Want to make enough time for Q&A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Kathy, she's already put it into chat. This is just a download of a PDF. And all this is just you create a personal action plan. And it has 4 questions. The question number 1 is the policymaker I want to build a relationship with is, and then you just fill in his or her name. Then the other thing is what value, shared valued or shared connection you can highlight. Oh, hey, we both went to Mizzou. Oh, we were both in the same sorority. Oh, our kids both, played on the same team. How can you draw some kind of personal connection with that person? And then the third one is, my next natural touch point. How can I touch this legislature or touch this person? Figure when is that? And then I want to have a follow-up time frame of so many 3 weeks, 1 month, and things. We had a lot of people that have already talked to their legislature in the last month. That's awesome. When are you planning to follow up again? And we have to have that. So what you can do is then fill out this, then email it to yourself as a reminder. And then what we do is you take your answers and you build that into a summary statement. I will reach out to blank using blank within this blank time frame. And then you email it to yourself as a reminder, hey, I am going to actually do this. Then you put a calendar note on your calendar is like, oh, by December 20th, I will have did my thing. You go back, you know what you're going to say, and everything is there. We don't need it. I don't need it. This is something personal for you, but this is a way that you can actually kind of just create your own little tiny action plan that is there. All right, we're going to wrap it up here and then open it up for Q&A. But one thing I want to have you do is I want everyone to go to the chat and I want you to type in the answer to this question. What is the single most important ingredient in a lasting relationship with a policymaker? One word. Just type it in. I think Kathy's done the poll there. Type it in. What is the single most important ingredient in a lasting relationship with a policymaker? And while everybody is typing that in, I appreciate everybody's time today. I ran through a whole bunch of stuff. I have so many great stories I could have told and stuff. So if anybody ever wants to have coffee and just listen to some fun stories, I love sharing them. Didn't have time today for that, but we do have some time for Q&A for the rest of this and stuff. So we'll can go ahead and Kathy is taking over. We'll do the Q&A and see what is on everybody's mind.
Thanks so much, Scott. Words that we have: connection, trust, trust again, follow-up, communication, follow-up, persistent, stories. Those are all really wonderful. We do have one question in the Q&A. Hello, when you say legislator, are you also referring to aldermen, elected officials, etc.? Perhaps you will discuss later. Will you show us where to go inquiring where to find our legislator? So I think you mentioned, different policymakers for different policy issues and different arenas to bring your issues to. And so can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So that's a great question because we have to know, okay, well, what's the playing field? Am I playing in the right area? If it is an issue that is a zoning issue, well, that's going to be your local, planning and zoning. That can be your local city council. If you don't have P&Z in your county, it maybe goes to the county commission and things. And then you can just go and you can Google and just go to like county commission for Montauk County, and boom, you'll be able to find out who they are and things of that nature. If you go to the Missouri Senate or the Missouri House websites, it'll list your legislator where you can type in your address or your zip code, and it will tell you exactly who your U.S. congressman is, who you're that, and then links to their office and stuff. So you can do those. But understanding, okay, what is the issue that is in front of me, and who are the players? You might have. I was on the Public Service Commission. We have sometimes people be like, hey, they're wanting to build a new coal plant in this county, and everyone's, like kind of, going to the Public Service Commission because they have to approve it. Yeah, that's part of it. You have to understand that process, but also you had to understand, okay, there's a county piece where they have to approve those types of things. So you might have multiple jurisdictions and stuff, and just understand the process. And Google and AI, it can answer really good questions for you and stuff of like, what is the proper domain? And then you'll get access to all the different city council meetings and different things, and you can start paying attention to who these players are.
Okay, great question. Thanks for that. I don't see any additional questions in the Q&A. I don't see any additional questions in the chat either. Just a couple of notes about some of the resources shared. We will send the advocacy relationship template with a follow-up email that will also include a link to this webinar so that you can rewatch parts of it or share it with your friends, family members, people that you support. Any other questions? Last call for questions or comments for our presenter, Scott Rupp. You can drop those in the chat. We're watching that as well. And Scott, if there are no more, I'll hand it over to you for your final thoughts and wrap up.
All right. Well, heck, if there's no questions, man, I got time for another story. The best word picture story I've ever heard was dealt with Anheuser-Busch. So we're all pretty familiar with microbreweries, and you can buy beer at your local, Schnucks and everything. But in Missouri, there for a while, you could not sell beer that wasn't created by Anheuser-Busch. So there was a gentleman that had a bar in St. Louis, and he was making his own beer, and people wanted to buy it. And he couldn't sell it to him. He couldn't sell it in the stores. They're like, this is great. So he goes to the legislature. He's like, hey, I want to be able to sell my stuff. And I mean, a little tiny operator. Well, Anheuser-Busch was the most powerful organization in the state. They came in with their big power and lobbyists, and they're like, you can't do this. This is going to destroy Missouri's economy. Oh my gosh, you know how many people we employ and how many charities we donate to and stuff. You can't do that. It's going to ruin, all the stuff we have. And so this little guy just could not get his little bill passed. And he got beat every time, every time, every time, every time and stuff. And so finally he just like, I got to change something. So he decided to change his tactic. What he did is he walked into the senator's office after he made an appointment. And when he made the appointment, he said, can I have 1 minute of the senator's time? And so he would get the appointment, he'd go in and he'd walk in the door and he's like, hey, Senator, I appreciate it. I told your secretary I only need 1 minute of your time. And then he'd get out his watch and he goes, and that minute starts now. And then he just stared at his watch. Now, sometimes the senator would be like, oh, what's going on here? He'd be like, oh, no, wait, 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 wait. You told me you'd give me a minute. My minute's not up. Okay, my minute is up. Thank you very much, Senator. I appreciate your time. That was really, really important for me. And he'd turn to walk and he'd leave. Now, granted, everybody was like, wait, what was that? And he'd stop and he'd go, oh, I just wanted to let you know that Anheuser-Busch brewed more beer in that 1 minute than I could brew in an entire year. But yet somehow I am like going to ruin Missouri's economy. What you guys have bought into is you have a monopoly that is trying to keep small businesses down. And that is what you're really voting on. The next year, his bill passed unanimously, and I think you can go and you can find his beer in every grocery store all across the state because he created a word picture that was able to refute all the stuff that everybody else was saying, and he got the legislatures to understand it on their level. And that really changed the landscape for, yeah, it's beer. It's not people with developmental disabilities, but they're both pretty important in my world.
Thank you so much for that. We have a wow, that's awesome. And there were a couple of reactions there too. Thank you for an informative session. Another participant says, some clapping. Yeah, we have a couple minutes if you have another story, or we can wrap it up. It's 100% up to you. And I want to put you on the spot.
One more story. And this is a good story. So after I passed the autism insurance legislation, and it was a huge undertaking to get this done, I had a woman that came in my office and she sat across from me and she started to tell me a personal story. And she started to tell me about her daughter who had an eating disorder and how her daughter would get so sick and she'd have to spend 2 weeks in the hospital. And then she'd come out and her insurance was able to pay for her to get some mental health counseling. And she would go and see her counselor and she'd be doing so good and she wouldn't relapse and she'd be doing so good. But back then they had some archaic rule that you could only have like 6 or 7 sessions for mental health disorders or something of that nature. And the insurance company wouldn't pay for her daughter to go see a counselor anymore. And they didn't have much money and they had tried to pay for it themselves, but they couldn't keep up the schedule. So sure enough, her daughter would relapse. She'd get really sick. And then she spent 2 more weeks in the hospital. Now, granted, that was costing the insurance companies thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And then she sat across from me and she's like, this makes so much sense. Why can't we help them understand that if they pay $70 to the counselor, it'll save them thousands of dollars? And she's like, great, powerful story. She's tearful. She's sitting across from me. And she's like, Senator, will you help me? And I had to say no because I couldn't. I had just spent all my political capital getting the autism insurance legislation. If I came right back with another autism or another insurance issue, people wouldn't listen to me. So I sat across her and I said, but this is what I would do if I were you. And within 30 minutes, we sketched out a multi-year plan on how she could get this done. And I promise, I said, I can't do it for you, but I'll help you find people that can, and I will help coach you along the way. And what she did is she would come back the next year. She'd be like, I took your advice. I did this. What's next? Okay, follow the plan. We did this. She did everything on that plan year after year after year And my last year as a senator, I was able to vote yes on the bill that was able to allow all of these people to get that coverage that they need. Now, unfortunately, it was too late for her daughter. Her daughter had passed away, but she knew the process. She was patient. She had persistence. And she listened and she did everything she was supposed to do. So when people tell me, oh, this can't be done, you can't do that, she was a mom. She was not a professional. She dedicated her own time. She worked and she would come up and make the stuff. She did it all on her own. She didn't have an organization. She didn't have it. And she unfortunately couldn't change it for her daughter, but she changed it for so many thousands of other people across the state. And so everything that we talk about, and everything that Kathy teaches you, and everything that Easter Seals teaches you, it does work if you follow it. So thank you for your time today. And I appreciate the ability to be able to tell stories.
Thank you so much, Scott. We have many people in the comments just thanking you for a very informative session, learning a lot about the mind of a legislator, and sharing their thanks. So look for the follow-up with the recording, everyone. Again, thank you so much to Scott Rupp for spending this hour with us, passing on his experience and wisdom. We so appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.